Hi again, everybody. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com, and this is another episode of Ask the Lawyers. A sad reality these days is that women and newborn babies are being harmed during labor and delivery because of poor medical care. In fact, Harvard Public Health magazine says the state of Georgia has the country's highest maternal death rates, and they are disproportionately high among the Black and Hispanic population. Here to answer our questions about this is attorney Lyle Griffin Warshauer of the Atlanta-based Warshauer Group, whose firm focuses primarily on personal injury cases. Lyle, thank you for making some time to join us today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So why do you think medical malpractice resulting in birth injuries occurs in the United States at all, and why is it disproportionately in the minority communities?
Well, I think we have malpractice in a variety of contexts, but it is true that we are seeing more maternal problems related to labor and delivery processes. And it may well be, I don't think we've gotten to the bottom of why. I think it has to do some with the fact that people are experiencing health crises in other situations, that when you then have a pregnancy, it's just compounded. And we're seeing problems in both community hospital settings and in urban settings where they're, for whatever reason, folks are not paying attention to the problems that their patients are experiencing.
Is it sometimes the lack of prenatal care? Sometimes it compounds by the time there's labor and delivery too?
Absolutely. I mean, prenatal care is essential for healthy deliveries. And if there are problems going on during the prenatal period that are not picked up, we can have problems with both mom and baby prior to the labor period. But if you come in with those pre-existing problems and then you start the labor process, it becomes all the more dangerous.
Can you give us an example of a birth injury case that you've handled and how that worked out?
Well, recently, a couple of years ago, I represented a mom, a family really, that had lost a child as a result of a labor process. This was in a community hospital, and it was not a poor family, but it was a hospital that unfortunately was not equipped to handle a crisis that occurred during the labor. Mom had had a cesarean section for her first child. And during the process of labor, as you probably can imagine, the labor process is intended to cause some stress in order to get the baby out. The uterus is contracting. And if you've had a prior cesarean, there's always a risk that that incision will open up during the labor process. And that's in fact what happened in this case, but because it was a smaller community hospital, they did not have the facilities available for an operative suite. They did not have an anesthesiologist, and therefore they were not prepared to do the cesarean that was necessary. Mom's uterus ruptured, and the baby was born, had already died. So those kind of tragedies can happen just for failure to have, to be prepared for what is an anticipated and preventable catastrophe.
And what was the ultimate outcome in that case?
In terms of what happened to the family, or from a compensation standpoint?
From the compensation, was there litigation? And
There was litigation. In fact, it was quite extensive, but it was resolved ultimately favorably.
Are parents, in your experience, usually informed at the hospital that a preventable medical error has happened, or is that usually not something that they're told and they're kept in the dark there?
There are occasions where a hospital will come to a family and say, something happened, and may apologize for it or try to make it right. But that is, in fact, very, very rare.
Right.
So determining whether something went wrong is quite an investigatory process, but there certainly are signs in either mom or baby that might indicate that there's a reason to look into that.
Well, that leads to my next question. I know you don't have time to get too deep in, but what are some of those signs? How can someone know whether it was just it was something that could have been prevented, or it was something that was unpreventable that happened?
Well, first of all, you have to know that there was an adverse consequence to the labor and delivery process. And
Okay.
so that tends to be the easiest question to answer. So you'll know when you have your baby if the baby is healthy appearing.
Right.
Or is compromised in any way. So, sometimes the babies come out and they're blue and they're not breathing and they require resuscitation. They might be seizing shortly after birth. If it's related to mom, you might have a situation where mom is, bleeding profusely or goes into a coma or something. It's pretty obvious that something went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next question is why? And that's where it gets difficult, and that's where it's necessary to have professionals kind of evaluate the scenario to determine what exactly happened and why.
So if something happens, and even if the parents are not sure exactly why it happened, what should they do? At what point do they contact an attorney, and how can an attorney help them in that situation?
Well, unfortunately, the short answer is the sooner the better.
Right.
And you don't really want to be encouraging that kind of scenario when someone has either suffered a significant loss or is ill and needs medical care. So first and foremost, make sure that the medical care is provided that is necessary. But the reason I said sooner than better is we need to look at the records and ask questions of people before records can be changed, before memories are altered, all of that kind of thing. But an attorney can then assist the family in obtaining the information that is going to be necessary to look to see what happened during the prenatal period, during the labor, and sometimes after the delivery. There can be errors or omissions after the delivery that cause injuries to both mom and baby. In fact, the maternal complications tend to be greater for the problems that mom has tend to be greater after delivery because the focus is really on baby, and sometimes there's the attention is taken off of mom. So getting the records, talking to providers, and also looking at the nature of the injury that occurred, and then we can look backwards to see what might have caused that.
Obviously, this is a time, and if something has happened, it's a very emotional time, a lot going on for these families. But if they're not sure, you would recommend talk to an attorney, someone who's not caught up in the emotion of the situation, who can help them figure out what's going on, I would assume, correct?
Absolutely. And I think, lawyers are counselors, and I think we can be of great help to a family that suffered a tragedy to both understand what happened and to know the best way to remedy that situation if it does necessitate some kind of legal action. But I think we also provide a service in just helping people understand when bad things happen. And if there isn't a bad actor involved, if it's sometimes things do happen through natural means,
Right.
and it helps people know that it isn't someone's fault. But if someone failed to comply with the standard of care and the medical care they provide to a child or a mom, then there are means of redress, and that's what lawyers do, and we can help with that too.
That's great advice. Lyle, thank you so much for making time for us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyers. My guest has been attorney Lyle Griffin Warshauer of the Warshauer Law Group based in Atlanta, Georgia. Please take a second and click on the subscribe button at the bottom of the screen so you'll know when we have new episodes of Ask the Lawyers. And if you think you or a loved one are the victims of medical malpractice and you're ready to get the best information, or you're ready to choose a lawyer that lawyers choose, please visit AskTheLawyers.com. I'm Rob Rosenthal for AskTheLawyers.com.